The house gleamed like a showroom. Perfect furniture, spotless floors, expensive paintings on pristine walls. But inside, 3 people lived like strangers under one roof. The mother moved through rooms like a ghost. The 6-year-old boy sat in corners, eyes distant and empty. They had everything money could buy, yet owned nothing that truly mattered. Maxim arrived on a Tuesday morning to fix the broken heating system. He was 40, with calloused hands and a quiet smile that reached his eyes. He noticed things others missed. The way the child flinched when his mother's voice rose. How no family photos hung anywhere. The silence that felt heavier than stone. He could have finished the job in 3 days. Instead, he found reasons to return. A loose pipe here, a faulty wire there. Small things that needed attention, he said. But really, he was watching, learning, understanding the invisible wounds that filled this beautiful, hollow home. The mother, Elena, barely acknowledged him at first. She was 35 and exhausted in ways sleep could never fix. Her marriage had ended badly 2 years ago. Trust had shattered like glass, cutting everyone it touched. Now she moved through life on autopilot, providing for her son but unable to reach him. The distance between them grew wider each day, though they shared the same space. Maxim started small. He brought fresh bread one morning, still warm from the bakery. "I bought too much," he lied gently, leaving it on the kitchen counter. Elena stared at it for a long moment before turning away. But the next day, the bread was gone. He fixed things that weren't broken, tightened hinges that worked fine, adjusted windows that opened perfectly well. And while he worked, he hummed old songs, simple melodies that filled the silence without demanding attention. The boy, whose name was Dima, began sitting closer. Not close enough to talk, just close enough to listen. One afternoon, Maxim found Dima drawing in a notebook, dark scribbles, angry lines that tore the paper. He sat down nearby, not too close, and started sketching on a scrap of wood with a pencil. A bird, then a tree, then a house with smoke curling from its chimney. Dima watched from the corner of his eye. Maxim said nothing, just kept drawing, his movements calm and steady. The next day, Dima left his notebook open where Maxim would see it. A small test. A tiny door cracked open. Maxim looked at the drawings, then nodded seriously. "You feel a lot," he said quietly. "That takes courage." Dima's hand trembled slightly as he closed the notebook, but his eyes, for just a moment, weren't quite so distant. Elena noticed the changes before she admitted them to herself. How Dima no longer hid in his room all afternoon. How the house felt less like a museum and more like a place where people breathed. She watched Maxim from doorways, suspicious at first. Men had promised kindness before. They always wanted something in return. But Maxim asked for nothing. He just showed up, did his work, and treated them both with a gentleness that expected nothing back. When Dima knocked over a glass of water, Maxim simply cleaned it up, saying, "Happens to everyone. I broke 3 cups last week." No anger, no judgment, just acceptance. Weeks passed. The heating was long fixed, but Maxim found other projects, building a small bookshelf, repairing a garden fence. Elena stopped questioning it. She realized she didn't want him to leave either. His presence had become something she hadn't felt in years. Safety. One evening, Maxim brought materials to build a birdhouse. He set everything on the kitchen table and looked at Dima. "Want to help?" he asked, not demanding, just offering. Dima hesitated, then nodded. They worked side by side, Maxim's large hands guiding the small ones, teaching without lecturing, praising without exaggeration. Elena watched from the doorway, something breaking open in her chest. This man, this stranger who owed them nothing, was giving her son what she'd been unable to provide. Not expensive toys or perfect conditions, just time, attention, the simple gift of being present. She felt tears on her cheeks before she knew she was crying. Not sad tears, something else. Something that felt like ice melting after a long, brutal winter. Maxim glanced up, met her eyes, and gave the smallest nod. Not pity, understanding. He knew what it cost to let walls come down. The birdhouse took 3 evenings to complete. On the last night, Dima painted it bright blue with yellow dots. His strokes were wild, joyful, nothing like the angry scribbles from before. When he finished, he looked at Maxim and smiled. Actually smiled. It transformed his whole face, made him look like the child he was supposed to be. "Can we hang it tomorrow?" Dima asked. His voice was small but clear, the first real question he'd asked in months. "Absolutely," Maxim said. "You picked the best spot." That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She sat in the kitchen, looking at the birdhouse drying on newspapers. This ordinary object, built by calloused hands and small fingers, meant more than anything in this expensive, empty house. It was proof. Proof that broken things could be repaired, that trust could grow again, slowly, carefully, if someone was patient enough to wait. The next morning they hung the birdhouse together, all 3 of them. Maxim held the ladder. Dima climbed up with Elena's hand steadying him. When it was secure, they stood back and admired their work. "A family," Elena thought suddenly. "We look like a family." The realization should have scared her. Instead, it felt like coming home after being lost for years. She looked at Maxim, really looked at him, and saw someone who'd chosen to care when he could have walked away. Someone who'd given everything and asked for nothing. Someone who'd healed her son's heart by simply being kind, day after day, with no guarantees it would matter. "Thank you," she whispered, 2 words that carried the weight of everything she couldn't say. Maxim smiled, that quiet smile that reached his eyes. "No need," he said, but they both knew that wasn't true. There was every need. Gratitude for patience, for gentleness, for not giving up when walls stayed high and hearts stayed closed. Dima tugged on Maxim's sleeve. When the man looked down, the boy threw his arms around his waist and held on tight. No words, just that embrace, that simple, powerful gesture of trust finally given. Maxim's eyes grew bright as he hugged back, careful and tender, like holding something precious. Elena watched them, and the house that had been cold and gleaming, perfect but lifeless, suddenly felt warm, felt real. The walls held more than expensive things now. They held hope. They held the beginning of something new. Not perfect, not a fairy tale, but honest and true and worth fighting for. Maxim knew his work here was complete. Not the work he'd been hired for, but the work that mattered. He'd helped rebuild what seemed destroyed forever, and in doing so, he'd become part of something beautiful. A new family structure, imperfect and healing, but filled with the kind of love that grows from choosing each other, day after day. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest transformations. A warm loaf of bread, a quiet song, a birdhouse painted blue and yellow. These simple things can heal hearts that medicine cannot reach. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below. Tell us about a time someone's patience changed your life. Because these stories matter. They remind us that caring costs nothing, but means everything, and that broken hearts, given time and tenderness, can learn to trust again.